CalazCon is a show about war, obsession, colonialist occupation, and the many forms of violence those inflict. See the description for content warnings specific to this episode.
I want to thank the DFS for entrusting me with the new position of ambassador to Jovengel.
I don't have a squad anymore. They all died, they all left.
So if you need a way out, I can help you there.
I am to be tried for political engineering and sabotage.
This entire legislature is falling apart under the weight of so much fucking bullshit.
Welcome everyone to the epilogue for the Legislature. I am Austin Ramsey. I am your host for this episode, and this episode is sponsored by Gabe Gonzalez. Today, I'm joined by Brendan.
Hello, my name is Brendan McLeod. You can find all the stuff that I do at sulcata.games. You can listen to me on my other show, Oathsworn, at oathswornpodcast.com. Today I am playing Red Philodendron, previously the legislator for Zero Accountability, and currently ambassador to Jovengel.
Also with us is Gavin.
Hello, my name is Gavin Fraziot. You can find everything that I do at mixedsuccess.com. I am playing Kagan Fishy Fischel, the legislator for Terminal Company.
We've also got PB.
Hi folks, I'm PB. You can listen to me also on a podcast called Gahooligans, or you can check out the roleplay games that I write every once in a while at poly3d.itch.io. And I am playing Gishlak Nil, soon-to-be former representative of the Blue Sky Endowment.
Also with us is Snuggs.
Hi, I'm Snuggs. You can find me right here on Discord. I play Zendre Mavis, the former representative legislator for the 86, and now a prison inmate.
And last but never least, Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna. You can find the game that I wrote at capesinthedark.net or seasidesepulchre.itch.io. Today I'm playing Dr. Clepsydra Kane, the soon-to-be former legislator for the Farm Upstate. We have a lot of those now.
Today we are doing the epilogue for the legislators, so the format is going to be a bit different than usual. To start with, we're going to establish the stakes of what an unfulfilled drive means. Dr. Kane, what is your drive?
Win the hearts of the people of Hestiel to the side of the DFS.
To fulfill that will require 4 drive clocks, as it affects an entire faction. And if it goes unfulfilled, the people of Hestiel are perpetually resentful of the DFS. Red, what is your drive?
Red's drive is take control of Hestiel through chaos and war.
For Red to take control of what is effectively a faction would require 4 drive clocks. If those drive clocks aren't spent, Red never gains control of Hestiel. Fishy, what's your drive?
My drive is to upgrade the Jovengel ceasefire to a concrete alliance.
So that will require 4 drive clocks to affect a faction, and if unfulfilled, the ceasefire never becomes anything more solid. Gishlak, what's your drive?
My drive is to become an executive producer on a Calazar series.
To affect an individual, that will require 2 drive clocks, and if unfulfilled, Gishlak never becomes an official part of Calazar. Zendre, what's your drive?
My drive is to help veterans retire from the war so that they're not being borne down by it.
That is a bit more flexible. 3 clocks could be spent to help a single squad, or 4 clocks could be spent to change the policies for the DFS. And if it goes unfulfilled, veteran soldiers remain on the battlefield. So with those stakes set, let's go on to establishing one final look into each other through our beliefs. Dr. Kane will be the subject of the first round. Each of you will ask one question about Dr. Kane based on your beliefs. You can make this a little scene if you want, or just describe how it is that you realize this about Dr. Kane as time passes. Red, what question do you want to ask about which belief, and what are your standing beliefs?
My current belief with Dr. Kane is the good doctor seeks what I seek by joining the Empire. Freedom. And I guess maybe what I learn depends on what the answer is to this question. Is freedom what Dr. Kane wants, or is there something else that takes higher priority?
No, I think it's just freedom. It's, for her, she never really felt like she had the ability to decide what she wanted to do, being whisked from one thing to the next, and then finally deposited in the legislature for the siege on Hestiel. And this, for her, was deciding for herself what she wanted her future to be. So yeah, it's freedom. It's independence.
I think maybe Red learns about this after hearing or maybe even seeing something of Dr. Kane later on, but maybe we'll see that as we describe how our situations play out.
I like that.
Fishy, what are your current beliefs about the Doctor, and what's your question?
Dr. Kane would have been better off if she never had to make a weapon. And may we meet again, Doc. My question is, when the DFS does split, if you did come back, which I don't expect, which half would you go to?
I am learning just now that the DFS is splitting.
That will happen at some point during the 5-year time skip.
Sure.
The DFS splinters into 2 factions, one that completely divests from experimentation on people, and one that invests fully into it. And this is caused by a clandestine organization calling themselves the Wild Hunt.
Huh. Well, I'm excited to find out what that means in a year. If Dr. Kane was to return to the DFS, it would be the side that divests from that kind of experimentation. I don't expect that she would do it, though.
Okay.
And how do you think Fishy figures this out?
How much do you think they keep in contact? I wonder if when this happens in the next time, she shares some thoughts about the current direction of the DFS, asking for you and wishing you well.
It's really hard for me to get a message to you, but it's really easy for you to get a message to me.
I like that.
So I don't know how I would tell you, but I figure it's some letter at some point.
I think last time I mentioned the idea of like postcards without return addresses. And like, I think there's a cipher that they've developed. It's all handwritten and it takes like an hour or 2 to decode. It's these like semi-regular updates and check-ins. Just a view from life outside whatever the DFS becomes.
Mm-hmm.
Gishlak, what are your beliefs with the Doctor, and what's your question?
My belief with Dr. Kane is Dr. Kane was not built for war, parentheses, complimentary. And my question for Dr. Kane is, can we continue to do business outside of the context of the war, now that we've both left that behind? And I think the way that this question shows up is, unlike Fishy, I do have means of contacting you because I think it's reasonable to assume that, since I provided you with, like, the smugglers that got you out of the DFS.
I like that.
Several months later, you get a letter like, it's classic author writing someone questions about, like, really technical details so they can get something right in their book. Like, specifically, like, if a tooth grenade were to hit a mech with this type of armor, what sort of reaction would you expect? That sort of thing.
That's really
alongside
funny.
pleasantries, of course.
Of course. No, I like that a lot. That's really good. She does respond with, like, technical details, or at least details that would be technical enough to pass the sniff test of the scientist reading, like, this science fiction book. nothing like concrete. Like we're not talking like War Thunder forums or whatever.
Yeah.
But definitely like, oh, well, it would be kind of an exothermic reaction where you would cause some bubbling of the metal and deformation of the, you know. But like, I think the line that she doesn't cross is like, it's never like a monetary exchange. There's never like a commercial relationship that develops. Friends, resources, maybe, but if like Kieklak ever asks for, okay, do this thing and I'll give you money, she's like, no, I have things going on. We'll dodge the question. We'll beat around the bush. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that sounds fair. Keeping things purely social.
Although I guess Dr. Kane probably does eventually give some money to Kieklak, depending upon how well their publishing work goes.
I'm waiting for Phoebe to tell us what that book looks like.
Well, we'll see that in a bit. Zendre, what are your beliefs with Dr. Kane, and what's your question?
I only have one belief. It is Dr. Kane hasn't abandoned prudency despite everything. So I guess my question related to that is, what is the most prudent next step that she would take after having left behind the DFS for the Empire?
I feel like I know what this is, but my thing is I'm not sure how you find that out.
Just to be clear, I don't think it was established that Dr. Kane left for the Empire. That was definitely read. I don't know where Dr. Kane went.
Okay, I guess my wires got crossed there. Okay,
I mean, there's still, like, the heart of your question that I can't answer, though.
I think anything that Zendre would hear would have to be through the pipeline. So it might be a whole, like, system of telephone where, like, you know, you say one thing and then someone says another thing and the whole message gets mutated.
The thing that I want to propose is that I think she ends up getting a job working as a navigator for, like, a big interstellar freight ship. There's like a local expose that's done about like, wow, thanks for this navigator, we were able to avoid damage in the asteroid fields. And there's like a picture associated with that. You're like scrolling through the news feeds one day and you see that picture. You're like, wait a minute, I recognize that person. So it's the prudence of how to survive, how to get by.
Okay.
Next up, we'll look at everyone's relationships with Red. Dr. Kane, what are your beliefs about Red, and what's your question?
I hope Red can believe in something bigger than himself. I used to think that Red was disillusioned with the world, but I'm coming to realize that I might be the disillusioned one. And that clever bastard. So that last one, I think there was an amount of like Dr. Kane being happy that you were able to get out and do something else. My question for you is, how long are you able to maintain your own freedom and autonomy working with the Empire?
Less than 0?
Yeah.
At this point, like, to a degree, it's just a different kind of prison.
Definitely.
It's just a prison that he has chosen.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly now that he has been saddled with official duties, there's a degree to which he's doing a job that he's better suited for, but it's not as though he's escaped the war.
Totally. Yeah.
Crucially, he is not overshadowed is the wrong word, but he is always tied to Tempestia. She is an essential part of why his presence there works.
And how does Dr. Kane learn that?
Do we meet up? Do we see each other? Do I read about it?
Yeah, why don't we see each other? We realize we're both going to be in the same place, and we make arrangements to meet up.
Mm-hmm. Is it one of those, like, we meet up at a place in, like, a public space, and I'm expecting it just to be the two of us, and we can shoot the shit or discuss whatever, and then it's you, and then standing behind you, Tempestia looming?
Oh, she's seated at the table.
Great.
She wouldn't miss the chance to finally get to meet the good doctor.
It's cordial, and also all too brief.
Yeah.
Fishy, what are your beliefs about Red, and what's your question?
My belief for Red is I'm the one good apple that's going to unrot this barrel, and Red's going to help me. And my question is, how helpful are you actually?
Part of this is dependent on drive clock expenditure, right? But there's a world where we find ourselves faced with Red having not realized the job that he signed up for, but determined to do a good job doing it. Committed to it in a way that he never was to his position at Legislature, in part because it's a much more vulnerable position to find himself in. But he kind of likes that. That kind of puts the fire in him.
Hell yeah.
And how does Fishy learn that?
We're in regular correspondence.
Yeah, I think I'm sending you reports. Reports that have something of the familiarity of their time in the legislature, but are still the reports of someone reporting to their superior.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a resentful way.
A very formal process of an ambassador being in contact with another politician.
Yeah.
Kieklak, what are your beliefs about Red, and what's your question?
I just have the one. Red is the kind of politician I thought I could be. And my question, maybe it's a little petty, but it's still something that I've been thinking about. Was my life ever in any danger with you? Or was it all just a game?
The time that you spent with Red, you've never been safer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Red's only a threat to those that he perceives to be a threat.
Ouch. Yep.
And how does Kieklak learn this?
I have a proposal.
Uh-huh.
When Gishlak's successor comes in and sits down at the office, like 30 different booby traps go off because they don't detect Gishlak's biosignature. Because Red is no longer there to have disarmed those or change them for the next person.
Mm-hmm.
Rip to that representative.
No. These are all strictly booby traps meant to unnerve and unhinge whoever is there. There's inexplicably a jack-in-the-box in the shape of Red. Or, you know what it is? I know exactly what it is. The ceiling falls away, and this enormous, weird puppet monster, and it looks kind of like the animatronic you'd see in the front of a pizza parlor. It looks a lot like Red for some reason.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's very strange. I wonder who put that there.
That image still gives me nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
How did they smuggle that in? The noir detective asks, stopping on a cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
Zendre, what beliefs do you have about Red, and what's your question?
I have just the one. Red is a two-faced bastard, but a proficient one. I guess my question is, since Red took this opportunity to put himself into a more favorable position, what is he doing with that newfound influence? And how does that affect the DFS?
Golly. Again, I think we have to wait and see how the drive clocks get spent to really know, but I can foresee a world in which the DFS and the Empire are closer together, and that bodes well, but it also is ominous in a way. It means that there are more situations like the attack on Goliath where people are working together, but those people have had grudges building up for years and years and years. And so working closely together is not always a productive relationship.
And how does Zendre know this?
This is similar to with Dr. Kane. Zendre would have to hear this through the pipeline, because I don't know if Red would really give Zendre the time of day.
I guess it depends a lot on where Zendre is at.
Prison.
Yeah. Maybe you catch this on the news feeds or something.
Yeah, I kind of like in painting in broad strokes, like a news report going, in an unprecedented move, Mr. Philodendron has established a new yada yada yada, and you see Philodendron like shaking hands with a Imperial ambassador, and there's like shit-eating smiles all around, and
yeah, Red's smiling broadly, and the commander that he's shaking hands with looks like he wants to kill him.
That's good.
So, I don't technically get any questions for this, but one response did raise a question that you gave, Brendan, which was, did you consider any of the legislators a threat?
Define threat.
No.
Dr. Kane's one of the most physically dangerous people I've ever met.
What?
Yeah, totally. I'm glad we're friends. I was very worried about what Fiji might become. Time will tell whether or not my feelings about that are true.
Okay, thank you for indulging me.
Always.
So next up is Fishy. Dr. Kane, what are your beliefs about Fishy, and what's your question?
Fishy's world is one of magic and fairy tales. At this rate, he's certain to be devoured by someone else with grander ambitions. I'll do my best not to cry at his funeral. Does continuing with business as usual save lives or leave more people dead? I wish I had his certainty that it does. And I've heard stories about people who could change the world with sheer force of will. If anyone could do it, it might just be him. My question is, how long does it take you to get disillusioned with the DFS? Or does your optimism last forever?
God.
How many more people have to die?
Disillusionment. It's a self-deception after a while. Like a denial by admittance. Part of it is like, after everybody's gone, Fishy gets a lot done, and then new people shuffle in with new squads, and it's like starting from square one, with maybe even fewer resources than before. There's like just the hint of cynicism building. You know, I put my all into keeping Terminal Company alive, and now that wasn't enough. I have to put my all in again. How do I do that? And there are some people who burn out from that, but I don't think Fishy burns out per se. Fishy ends up being one of those people who's always running from something by pushing all of their energy into their work.
Yeah.
And that something is the trauma of their whole squad getting wiped out, their tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
And how does Dr. Kane learn this?
Is this one of your few communiques that you're able to get to?
I don't know if you watch the speeches, but
yeah,
his speeches get less, what's the word, genuine, sincere, energetic.
Yeah, I like that.
They're just speeches. They're no longer, he's not acting, like using his acting background. He's a politician now.
Yeah. She does pay attention. Watching whatever the DFS equivalent of C-SPAN is.
Gishlak, what are your beliefs about Fishy, and what's your question?
My beliefs are, Fishy's reluctance is understandable, but he remains a valuable asset in the DFS, and I'm worried Fishy isn't thinking past the moment the ceasefire ends. My question for Fishy is, what aren't you willing to sacrifice to keep this ceasefire together?
Bodies.
Damn.
Very clear.
Nobody's allowed to die. Not even for the gold. I'm not that one Marvel hero villain, Peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not John Cena.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The immediate lives are more important to me than the ephemeral greater good.
All right.
And how does Gishlak learn that?
Gishlak definitely still watches C-SPAN for the record.
So that's how you pick that up? Fishy's limits?
Yeah, as long as that's what Gavin thinks.
Yeah, I think there's like a...
Probably giving a speech to that effect or something, right?
Yeah, there's like a vote about like, do we do a Pyrrhic victory here, or do we pull out, or do we sacrifice this small squad in order to take over this larger territory? And I vote against it every time.
Yeah, especially like something that would strengthen relations with Jovangel if you did it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Sticking to your principles, I appreciate it.
Zendre, what are your beliefs about Fishy, and what's your question?
My beliefs are his term as representative might prove challenging if he's called to return to his old life, and despite everything, he can still put his faith in others. And I thought about this one a little bit. I think I'm going to go with the question, does he struggle when the old life comes calling, and how?
So I actually asked my squad in a straw poll if they would vote for Fishy again. And I got a unanimous yes.
Congratulations.
They would vote for Fishy, every single one of them. So I think there isn't really a call back to being a foot soldier.
So he's gone full suit. Okay.
Full suit. Terminal Company is into it. They're very happy, at least happy enough to vote for Fishy again. If Fishy lost the vote or like wasn't a politician anymore, he would quit the armed forces. Whatever sanctions would be related to that, but he wouldn't pick up a gun again.
Fair enough.
That's what it is. He stopped going to the gun range. He stopped carrying a weapon on him.
Okay.
Is that how Zandre realizes it? You see him in a photo or in a video and You realize there's no holster on Fishy's hip?
Maybe. I mean, would Fishy, after everything, would Fishy give Zendre the time of day?
I don't know. Like, that was an in-the-moment promise. Does Zendre want to come back and work for Fishy? Does Zendre want to get back into this?
He's got years to think about it.
Maybe you can save that answer for when I come back around to you.
I mean, I can kind of see it either like, yeah, he either hears this down the grapevine or like Fishy like visits him sometimes in prison when he can. One of those two things.
Definitely visits, like, at least once a year. Fishy is getting busier and busier, so it's harder and harder, but at least once a year.
Okay, cool.
Red, what are your beliefs about Fishy, and what's your question?
My beliefs about Fishy are Fishy's got good intentions, and one day Fishy's going to wake up and realize what he's become. My question is about what you've become, because from the start, and in particular in the moment where we needed our pilot playbooks, you've been really clear that Kagan Fischl is the rookie. One day, you're going to wake up and realize you're, I don't know, the bureaucrat, probably? But as part of that, the rookie has to set aside what they were before and take up a new tragedy related to their experiences. I guess my question is, what is Fishy's new tragedy?
That's a good question.
Is it just CalazCon underlined 3 times?
No. I have like 2 options for this, and they're both differently sad.
Great.
Either it's Birdie breaks up with him.
Aww.
Because they've both grown apart. Like, they don't get to see each other. Fishy's become like a whole different person in a lot of ways. And like, Fishy's expectation for the relationship was totally different than Birdie's. Birdie was expecting, we're all gonna die. Here's a cute guy. Let's find some sliver of joy in this hellscape. Whereas Fishy is naive in that way. And we talked about before that he was hoping for like white picket fences. So it's either that breakup or Board Squadron, which Birdie leads, gets wiped out.
Ooh, jeez.
Why not both?
Oh!
Beam Saber.
There's a letter that comes with the coffin.
Yeah.
Oh god, what if it's the Dear Johnny letter in the same batch as the
Oh no.
As the like casualty reports from Terminal Company? Just same day in your mail pile.
Oh my god. I'm going to have to tell Terminal Company that I did this. Oh, shit. Yeah,
I'll always value the time we spent together.
That would reinvigorate Fishy a lot into becoming like full bureaucrat.
Yeah. Time to make Parliament my whole life now, I guess.
I don't have time to feel. I need to succeed.
Beautiful.
Oh,
beautiful. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you for this treat. Oh, Red learns this because Red's at the funeral. Because of course he is.
Next up is Gishlak. Dr. Kane, what are your beliefs with Gishlak, and what's your question?
I've only got one. Gishlak will be a better writer than a legislator. I can't wait to hear what they have to say. This might be a better question for epilogues, but I'm thinking, how well does your book do? Since you talked about like making this change, I've been imagining Dr. Kane as like picking up a copy from like an airport bookstore kind of a situation.
Oh no, you get an advanced reader copy.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
It's really good writing, but it is also very clearly like a self-insert fanfic, basically. A self-insert, like, crossover of both the actual events of CalazCon and also loosely fitting into the fanfic they wrote before, but all the names have been changed, of course.
Nice.
This is its own original fictional universe.
Totally, of course.
So it's fun, but it also feels a little tacky. And we'll talk about how well that does for the broader public in the future.
You get a package on your desk, and you open it up, and it's your advanced reader copy, but it's full of red pen marks, editing. I think your phrasing would be a little bit better if you changed this word. Is that really how that happened? I don't remember it going like that.
Hey, I'm allowed fictional license.
Stuff like that.
Red, what are your beliefs with Gishlak, and what's your question?
My belief for Gishlak Nil is Gishlak could be great if they would just give in to their vitriol. Is Kieklak more themselves now, or are they just putting on a new persona?
That's a good question. They are putting on a persona, but also again and again, people have been asking questions. What's beneath the persona? What's down there? I don't think there's much. So, in some ways, it's a new persona.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just a person who wears a lot of masks. They're a person whose vocation is making masks, you know?
Yeah. Red sees this as part of like a late night interview with you. Like you're on like a late talk show or something like that.
Yeah. I have one other proposal if you'd like, which is Red shows up to a signing event at a bookstore.
Absolutely not. Never,
okay, yeah. Late night talk show it is.
Never in his life. Can you imagine if he would never put himself in the position where it's like, oh, and this is Red, from my book.
They're not named Red. That character is named Green in the book.
It's Green. Here, sit down with me. Sit down with me and talk about all of our adventures that we had together.
Oh, I was thinking like you're at a bookstore and there just happens to be a signing event happening.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Don't acknowledge it, but you're able to observe.
No. It's no. This is even better. It's Red. Red is there. Didn't realize you were going to be there, and gets trapped and gets like pulled into the Q&A or something like that. Is like at Kieklak's mercy in front of an audience. Is like an ambassador to Jovengel now. Has to be on his best behavior. Is like yes, I loved working with you. Yes, we are great friends.
Is very careful to never say that any of the characters in the book are based on you.
Absolutely not. No.
Someone in the audience asks that. I say, of course not, of course not.
No, Kieklak's just a really creative person.
This is maybe the first time in their career where Kieklak has had a little bit of power over Red, and they are loving it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot.
Fishy, what are your beliefs about Kieklak, and what's your question?
Kieklak talks a talk, but what then? Kieklak finally tastes dirt. Looks like they don't like it. You're from a Jovengel noble family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever reconnect with them after all of this?
Honestly, no. They consider that life burnt and done. The way that you realize that, perhaps, is that they don't reach out to you either. That they consider their legislative life, their political life, also done.
I see.
If there was maybe some advantage into contacting you, sure. But just doing it for old time's sake, for any previous friendship you might have thought you had.
I didn't, but go on.
You might have thought they had.
Yeah.
Zendre, what are your beliefs about Kieklak, and what's your question?
They have an idealized version of the life they left behind. The enemy of our enemy is a tool we can use. And seeing someone break under the weight of responsibilities is intriguing when viewed from a different lens. I guess I want to ask about the first one. Has their ideals about that former life changed? Or do they still hold to them?
At least from what you can read in their books, they're a little bit softer towards the analog to the Jovengelian Empire than they used to be. They're still not, pro it, but they're more willing to, present sympathetic characters from that side. They're a little bit less, fiercely patriotic for the DFS, which probably falls in line also with the current splintering of the DFS that is going on.
Okay.
And how do you learn that?
Did Zendre get a signed copy through the mail or something?
Yeah, I think everyone got a signed copy.
Maybe there was, a letter that came with it saying, yeah, this is what I'm doing with my life now?
One was sent to Red's office, but never delivered to Red, I imagine. Fishy did get one. That is, the one thing I did do with Fishy, just because, hey, this book was loosely based on our experiences together. So yeah, you do receive one in prison.
Okay.
So now we'll do Zendre. Dr. Kane, what are your beliefs about Zendre, and what's your question?
There's a certain clarity to standing on the precipice. I think Zendre has learned the truth about this war. And even despite his imminent demise, Zendre is still trying to make moves. But what does it get him? And I think my question is, eventually, probably, you get out of jail. But what do you want to do with the time that you have?
Zendre wants to make a fresh start for himself. He wants to wash his hands of all the sneaking around, dirty dealings, double handings. He just wants to be the honest person he used to be to the best of his ability. Even though, like, a lot of that faith in him was pretty damaged, he just wants to start over.
How do you think that's communicated?
He does send letters outgoing to his former associates, just basically, I don't know if they ever read them or not, or if they even get delivered, but he's doing it for his own sake.
Yeah.
Such and such, this was my life, made mistakes, starting over, yada
Sure.
yada.
Yeah, totally. I think it's like hard to get those letters to Dr. Kane, but I think eventually through shenanigans and return addresses and a lot, they eventually get to her.
Red, what are your beliefs about Zendre, and what's your question?
My belief about Zendre Mavis is chum in the water. My question is, what would it take to get you involved in politics again?
You would have to use some of the old hooks that got him in the first place. And he's doing his best to not let those hooks draw him back in. So maybe, possibly, question mark, but not without a fight.
I think Red learns this because he offers Zendre a job.
Okay. And he's gonna very politely turn it down in a formal thank you for the consideration, but I am focusing my career efforts elsewhere as I try to reestablish myself as a productive member of the community.
Mm-hmm.
What's the job?
Assistant to the ambassador.
What's the real job?
I mean, I can always use a talented liar. I think the offers keep coming in more underhanded ways. Never explicitly threatening, but making it clear that it'd be a good idea to come work for me.
I can see the Yakuza memes now.
Yeah, you know. Just something to think about.
The Majima memes.
Fishy, what are your beliefs about Zendre, and what's your question?
People have been controlling Zendre his whole life. When he gets out, I need to make sure he actually wants to work for me. Do you?
If your head and heart is in the right place, he would consider it, because he is trying to make amends. And if he thinks that's an avenue for him to do that, he would. But if it's just more the same, like being a backstabby little shit, then he's just gonna be like, nope.
Well, Fishy's never been a fan of backstabby little shits. This is more of a aid advisor. Like, you've been to prison. Is there prison reforms that we need? You actually went to law school, so you kind of know how to write laws. During the game, just making decisions, but I think Fishy moves into a more actual legislator role in the future, like writing up procedures and whatnot. And like, once your expertise isn't the only thing, but also loyalty, I guess.
Yeah, I think he would probably, at the very least, consider the offer.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's a chance to, like, make amends.
If you reject the offer, because it doesn't sound like it's a full yes yet. It's the one offer you get from Fishy.
Yeah, fair.
And as time goes by, Fishy can't, like, keep up with you. We've seen throughout this series that Fishy will sort of, like, try to drop people if they aren't, like, immediately useful. It's sort of what he did with Gishlak until he could figure out something Gishlak was good for. And I think that would be what happens to you if you don't accept.
I like to think there's two boxes and one's just like piled up with red job offers and there's just a single job offer from Fishy in the other box.
Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely that one does feel a lot more appealing compared to the mountain of, hey, want to be a liar again?
Yeah. So, do you take it? Or do you just leave it there unresponded?
Fishy staring me down and being like, where do you truly lie? And if this is a chance to redeem himself, he is going to say, well, there's no guarantees what the future holds between now and when I get out. Yours is a proposal that I believe would be a great opportunity to start again. He can't make any promises, but he would accept.
Okay. We'll see where we're at 5 years from now. But
yeah.
We're 3.5 years from now. How long do you spend in jail?
I think we should leave that for the epilogues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gishlak, what are your beliefs with Zendre, and what's your question?
My belief is, I thought Zendre was an inspiration, but he is a victim of powers beyond our control. And my question for Zendre is, do you consider yourself a victim? Are you okay with being seen as a victim?
I don't think Zendre feels that he deserves to be seen as a victim, because as much as he was dancing along to a tune, he did choose to dance. He did take up this role of his own volition. So his punishment, he believes it's very well deserved, and he doesn't see the consequences in a romantic light.
All right. How would Kieklak learn that?
I don't know if they regularly correspond.
Mm-hmm.
Zandre's definitely not going anywhere, so I don't know if they write letters or visit, then maybe hear it from word of mouth.
Yeah, I think letters make sense. You're always the one who starts the conversation, and Kieklak responds politely.
Yeah, fair.
Just trying to follow up on when I was answering my questions that, hey, they kind of consider themselves separate from this now.
Zendre, has some pretty thoughtful things about the matter, is I don't consider myself a hero for the things I've done, yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
With all of the legislators' questions asked about each other, it's now time to look into their futures. Dr. Kane, what are you up to in the weeks after the legislature ends? Or at least your time with it does.
I've imagined this as a extended sequence of Dr. Kane quickly packing bags, running off in the night, boarding a ship, and seeing the trail of smoke as the ship breaches the atmosphere and gets out into space. I think there's a little bit as well of the farm upstate, with more members having left and deserted than not at this point. The bureaucracy that was keeping that research institution going is now in shambles. Papers are being undelivered, requests are being unfiled, and no one really is sure how to proceed. I imagine also there's because some of her plans were communicated to individual legislators, but I don't think it was communicated to the DFS generally. This is her abdicating responsibility, and I don't think that was allowed in that way. So I think there's also inspectors going through her office trying to figure out what happened based on what's there. But I'm spending my drive clocks to make sure that there's no evidence.
So you're spending your drives to get away clean and free?
Exactly, yeah.
How does Dr. Kane feel about not being able to... What was your drive again exactly?
Win the hearts of the people of Hestiel to the side of the DFS.
How does she feel about failing to do that?
Bad, right? But I think this has been the bad feeling that she's been having for the past few months here. This is something that she really wanted to be able to work. She was really hopeful that it would. And then over the course of things getting worse and worse and worse, it just stopped being a thing she could hope for. And then she started to plan for, if this isn't possible, then what do my next steps look like for myself?
Mm-hmm. Red, what do your weeks after your escape look like?
Red and Tempestia and what's left of her forces leave the planet and meet back up with Imperial Command. The forces of Joe Vangel, I think, are just as surprised as the DFS was to discover that there's apparently an ambassador in their midst. There is a lot of Red inflicting himself on Joe Vangel officers and officials in much the same way that we saw at the beginning of the legislature.
Does the culture shock of being amongst all these Jovangelians, does that bite him in the ass at all in those weeks?
I mean, Red has been undercover in most, if not all, of the major factions, at least at some point in his life. If anything, I think, plays the part of the bumbling foreigner pretty well, is able to pass off missteps and such as, oh, please, 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 excuse my brusqueness, excuse my ridiculous ways. I'm not accustomed to your panache.
He Mark Twain's it.
Yeah, a regular Ben Franklin.
Fishy, as the sole remaining member of the legislature, what do your weeks following everyone else's departure look like?
I think I'm consolidating what's left of the other squads, trying to fold them into Terminal Company. Whatever personnel and facilities and material is left, I'm cataloging, preparing to send to Terminal Company, or having members of Terminal Company come and take it over.
Kieklak, Are you evicted from your position in the weeks after that last session, or does that come later?
About a week or two after that last session, Representative Nill tenders their resignation, following investigations into their relationships and contacts with CalazCon up to and including the attack of Goliath. There aren't any actual charges filed, but those investigations are ongoing when they resign, rather than letting those continue. Basically, some internal pressure of either resign or we go public with some of this stuff. And anyway, they weren't going to win their next election. So at the end of that press conference there, a reporter asked them, what's next? Are you going to go and work on your fanfic now that that's been exposed? And they say, this time I wrote some proper fiction. We've seen what happens when fan works are taken to the extreme, and I'd want no more part of that.
What was the dirt that Kieklak was pressured with from inside?
Mostly the fact that they had hired those 2 aides who ended up being CalazCon agents.
To be clear, they weren't CalazCon agents. They were Jovangelion agents.
They were Jovangelion agents. I'd forgotten that. I do think that there are investigations into the attack on Spencer Holiday and the motives behind that, and just the massive amount of interactions online. There's nothing actually incriminating. I don't think they were actually doing anything illegal, but there's enough stuff that looks shady that, even if those investigations eventually ended up dropping regardless, it looks bad enough.
Mm-hmm.
They were overly friendly with some people from CalazCon through back channels. Because if you remember, before Goliath was unveiled, they were always pushing to befriend CalazCon and work with them against Jovangel.
The DFS threatens to expose your DMs.
Mm-hmm.
Your DMS.
My fanfic.net account already got exposed, but if my DMs get exposed too...
Disaster.
Devastating.
Zendre, what do your weeks after your arrest look like?
Sitting in a cell, working janitorial, just doing his own thing, and there's a lot of post-trial inquisitions that came in about the people who put him up to this. Maybe he got a little bit more of a lenient sentence because he was able to enter a plea deal and indict some of those. One final betrayal.
Yeah.
Get the guys who cut him loose. He meets with whoever comes to meet him, which aren't many people, considering the bridges he's burned. Not much you can really do in prison.
Mm-hmm. With those weeks passing, they turn into months and then into a year. Dr. Kane, where are you at a year later?
This is no longer Dr. Clepsydra Kane. This is Dr. Catherine Carbine, working as an assistant to the navigator on a big freight ship trolling cargo. Where we see her for this moment, she's stopped at a layover on a small moon that is mostly uninhabited, except for people that run the way station there. There's a news flash of the war still ongoing around Hastiel on a holo display. She doesn't really give it a glance. She just moved on. We get a view of her writing one of these postcards to Fishy, encoded messages, and then dropping it in a mail slot. But I think that's most of it.
A year later, after the final legislative session, CalazCon has passed. It lasts only a year, and by the time that the legislature closed for our characters, 6 months had already passed. So any remaining resistance is now Jovangelion in nature, holding up the permanent occupation of the DFS of Logel. I imagine that stings some, considering Dr. Kane's or Dr. Carbine's drive.
Yeah, it does. But there's not really a lot she can do about it now. She made her choice, and now has to live with that.
Red, where are you at a year later?
Serving the interests of the people of Jovangel and the DFS as faithfully as I can. There's a lot of difficulty. There's a lot of maneuvering that is necessary. A lot of people discover someone's gone through their stuff or dug up some dirt on them or manage to maneuver them into a position of unfavorable negotiation. But they don't discover it until Red and Tempestia are already sitting across the negotiating table from them.
And what kind of a hand does Red have in regards to the remaining Jovangelion resistance holding up the DFS liberation of Logel?
I think it's an uphill battle, honestly. Tempestia, as respected as she is, was not necessarily the singular voice of the Jovangelian forces. Her priorities are not everyone's priorities. And getting everyone to see things her way, to try and prioritize safety in the threat of the chaos that Calazar represents, is difficult. But in that, Red comes to really appreciate the direction that Fishy is able to give in terms of providing priority targets. Red's good at doing things, and that means that if someone gives him a job, that spares him the trouble of deciding what to do. He just gets to go do it, and that's what he's good at.
Fishy, it's been 6 months since CalazCon left, and a year since the other legislators who were present for your arrival at the legislature made their own departures. Are you still in the Hestial subcommittee? Have you moved upwards towards the committee for Logel? Or have you gone elsewhere entirely?
Terminal Company's probably gone up a tier by now and is large enough to cover more than just a city. Like, maybe all of our squads were part of like a subgroup, and now I control, or I am a member of the larger umbrella that has multiple like subgroups of 5 around the planet. I'm not spending I don't think it takes 18 months to convince the DFS to stop wars of aggression. So I'm not going to spend the drive clocks yet, but I am working towards that, both within the like military legislation and like in the news cycle, doing interviews, writing legislation and opinions, etc.
Kieklak, how's your writing going a year after you depart the legislature?
A year later, Kieklak Nil is at a bookstore. Maybe this is the very bookstore where Red ran into them, at a signing event for their debut novel titled A Thorn in the Smog. As I've already said, this novel is mostly a fictionalized version of the Battle for Hestial, except the main character is a heroic legislator who ends up taking up their own Avi to go to battle on the front lines. There's a lot of connections. Everything is very... They've changed all the names, and there's still a lot of elements coming over from their previous Calazar fic that they have, like, changed some character names. They are very clearly still the same characters from Calazar. It's very much a blending of both the fiction that they were into and the reality that they lived. But it's pretty popular. It's like a fun, pulpy novel. Based on a true story is always a great way to sell a novel. They've already gotten a deal for at least 2 follow-ups from their publisher. It's going well. I'll say their fans, the people at the crowd, is a mixture of both, like, young members of the DFS who are, like, into these pulpy, exciting novels of both the horrors but also the glories of war and, you know, sacrificing to do what's right. Fans of Calazar who are like, oh yeah, this is just like the stuff that I like, but it's even written by someone from the DFS and not from Exodus. And then there are also some, like, fandom watchers and people who watched the entire, like, scandal go down last year just kind of gawking in awe at the fact that this person has risen from the ashes of the absolute travesty of their online presence a year ago.
Who's the dedication to? Oh,
it's obviously to Adrian Weaver.
Yes, I was hoping you'd say
Yep. And all the other
true patriot.
True patriot.
Shout outs.
Yeah. My last note is that Kieklak looks genuinely happy at this signing event. They have found a new element, and they are in it.
Incredible.
Zendre, a year later, presumably you're in prison.
Yep.
Maximum, minimum, how much of a risk are you?
I would say minimum risk because Zendre is very much behaving himself. He has no reason to try and stir up trouble. He's kind of accepted the consequences. Now it's just serve the time and get out. During that time, I think the job offers have been coming in from both Fishy and Red. On the side, despite what he did, Zendre does got a knack for like certain logistics and law and political maneuvering, and so he's trying to put that to use in a good way as best as he can as a consultant for other initiatives. Typically ones that he can kind of gel with. I didn't touch upon the drive. I think now would be a good time to do it, is that failure to achieve what he wanted to is going to hang over his head for basically all of his life. Especially since, he kind of picked his own personal convictions over what he was put in a legislator's seat to do. Especially because of that. But he figures that if he can help others, at least that'll relieve the burden on his conscience somewhat, because indirectly he's kind of helping people do the things that he wanted to do.
How many drive clocks did you have full?
I only had the one, and I gave it to Fishy.
Okay. Years pass again. It is now 5 years since the last legislative session. 4.5 years since CalazCon left Hestial. Somewhere else, other than Logel, CalazCon has started once again, terrorizing some other planet and their locals. In the years between, the DFS has splintered into 2 groups, one completely divesting itself from experimentation on people, and the other that leans fully into it. A clandestine organization called the Wild Hunt are responsible for this schism. Dr. Carbine, where do we find you?
Dr. Carbine at this point has stopped running 5 years hence and has met up with people. In the schism of the DFS, there were a lot of other, what Dr. Kane would have called post-humans there that were not brought to the forefront during this. People who were integral to the infrastructure of the DFS, but were often overlooked because they were not fleshy in the same way. This was what Dr. Kane had spent her doctorate studying, the psychology of the post-human, and has been meeting up with people who fall under this category, trying to build a coalition, trying to hear other stories, trying to get a sense for where these other people are and what they're doing and how they're handling everything. So I think this is 5 years hence, a group is starting to form, not solely by Dr. Carbine, but alongside Dr. Carbine and a handful of other people that don't fit that traditional mold.
Is there a name for this group? Are they a formal organization?
No, I don't think so. It's word of mouth.
I see.
There's probably a more formalized structure that's developed over time, but that's not how it starts. And I don't know if we see where it grows.
Okay. I'm curious, how much of what happens to Dr. Kane is driven by her encounter with the interviewer, if anything?
Which interviewer?
From the intro that we recorded for the Farm Upstate.
Oh. I'm not sure. I think that's probably what prompted the name change. This interview happened, I think, right before, within the days leading up to Dr. Kane leaving and boarding the ship off Hestial. There were people that were trying to track her down and figure out where she went and bring her back. There were a few encounters as a result of that, but I'm not sure how long that goes on for. I don't know if that's something that would last 5 years worth. Is it?
No, I don't think so. I was more wondering if the interviewer using Dr. Kane's serial number was part of the decision that post-humans weren't as welcome here as she might have hoped.
Yeah. That's part of that, but I don't think that was a wake-up call to her, like that specific instance. I think that's something you already know.
Mm-hmm. Red, 5 years after you have left the legislature and become the ambassador to Jovengel, the DFS you are ambassador for, or were, we shall see, no longer exists. Do you still have political ties to one of the two halves, or have you been up to something else?
Red Philodendron and Tempestia, amongst others, were caught up in an explosion. Their bodies were not recovered. The adversarial forces within the Jovengelian Empire were implicated in the attack. This is, of course, bullshit. They're both still alive, somewhere. Maybe even for a short time they entertained the idea of, now we finally get the retirement that people like us don't usually get. But I think that wears off pretty quickly, because neither Tempestia nor Red Philodendron are the sort that are especially satisfied with sitting around looking at the beautiful plants on Garden Worlds. They begin to form a new independent squadron, something that can bring something of the force of justice delivered by sometimes unconventional means that they both recognize to be necessary.
Do you have a name in mind for that force?
Sunspot.
Huh.
The dark spots on the otherwise brilliant sun.
Okay, I have to ask.
Uh-huh.
You, Brendan, are you aware of Sunspot's existence within the story of CalazCon?
No.
Whoops.
I can do that. I can
No.
over.
You can totally keep that. I just wanted, if you want.
No, you got to tell me what the relevance is now, because Red would know even if Brendan didn't know.
That is true.
And even if it's a good association, Red would not pick a name that is tied to CalazCon in some way.
Sunspot is one of the organizations that led to the split because they were responsible for experimentation on people leading to psychics, including the 86's empath Danny.
Wait, in the DFS? I thought you said in CalazCon. Oh, you mean in CalazCon the show, not the organization?
Yes.
Oh, that's bizarro. Okay, interesting.
Wow.
Well, it's a good name, but I'm glad you got it. Okay, actual answer begins here. I don't think there's a name that we know just yet. I don't think it'd be a very good redacted squad if you knew what its name was.
That's fair. You weren't able to gain control of Hestiel. How do you feel about that?
Oh, that's fine. I'm old enough now that probably 4 or 5 drives have gone unfulfilled in some way or another. I'm still, well, ironically, I'm still alive, and that means that there's always a chance that I can try and get something done tomorrow instead.
Fishy. It's 5 years since everyone else left the legislature. 4.5 years since CalazCon left. Some amount of time since the DFS has gained full control over Logel, and the Jovangelian resistance is now just resentful pockets, maybe the odd terrorist attack. But for the most part, it's peaceful on Logel. Where is Fishy?
Well, a lot has happened. Birdie and Board Squadron are gone. Fishy's risen further up into probably the main body of DFS and maintained affiliation with the non-human experimentation side of the DFS. The human experimentation side is not kosher, literally. This is where I spend the 4 drive clocks. I think the DFS side that doesn't experiment on people lobbies with the greater councils to end wars of aggression. We've got all the resources we need. We've been acting high and mighty. We don't have to give up Logel because we have it now already. We're chill. We're just probably showcasing the compromises to his character that he's made. Maybe this happened 3 years before he would have argued to get rid of, or to vacate Logel totally, just give it back. But now he's really in it, and maybe still a young favorite. He's in his mid-20s now. He's got a lot of energy to draw upon, despite becoming the bureaucrat, despite giving it a little bit into cynicism.
Okay, so just to confirm, the DFS half that doesn't experiment on people no longer engage in wars of aggression, and Logel is under their control.
Yes.
Okay.
That is what I'm spending the drive clocks on.
So that requires 4 drive clocks. Who did you get those from?
I have 1 from Red, 1 from Zendre, 1 from myself, and I used 2 supply from the farm upstate to fill up my second drive clock. So that should be 4.
Yeah. How does Fishy feel about not being able to make the ceasefire with Jovangel become more solid?
I think he's pretty sore about it. Some part of him wonders if throwing his weight behind Red was a good idea, especially now that Red disappeared again.
Died. I am dead.
Died? Yeah, sure. I know better. But now that we've stopped with wars of aggression, we can replace Red with a more sincere ambassador.
Maybe Zendre Mavis.
Yeah, someone who's cut their teeth on politics like Zendre.
That would be very funny.
Pun intended.
Gishlak, It has been 4 years since you released your first book dedicated to Edrian Weaver and the other patriotic DFS soldiers who lost their lives on Logel. Where are you at? And who are you dedicating your books to now?
So, Gishlak Nil, they have ended up going with the pro-human experimentation side of the DFS. Not from any strongly held beliefs, but just that's where I have my current contacts, that's where my publisher is. They have settled into a pretty comfortable life. They live in a nice apartment, and after that first book, which mostly served as a standalone, they have done a related series that is it's on its fourth book. They've been, churning out books one every 9 months, one every year or so. Currently, they're working on writing their fifth book, which, let's see, it's dedicated to Dr. Kane. What? I don't know, they've been trying to spread around their dedications to, all the different people in their life, and this one especially is about how all different forms of life, it's pro your, alternate person, post-human organization, there's a little bit of that theme in there.
Cool,
It is also very much they are more directly taking from their fanfic. They are going back to Smoke and Roses and basically rewriting it. They are doing the 50 Shades of Grey, quite literally.
Love to dedicate my 50 Shades of Grey novel to a former coworker.
Book 4 was dedicated to you, Red.
Great. Great.
But I do want to say, it's 5 years later, they're living on a planet we've never seen before, that is solidly in DFS space, though maybe a little bit uncomfortably close to where the new CalazCon has landed. It is the middle of the night, but they are up, they are drinking a cup of coffee, they're tapping away at a typewriter. One thing that has stuck with them is okay, I don't want to leave a digital footprint anymore. They are halfway through their fifth book. They are very focused so they don't notice when their silent alarm briefly flicks on and then back off. They only notice when they start to choke on the smoke that fills their room. It's a few moments of blind panic as they spin around, they try to get up, they can't see anything, and as the smoke starts to dissipate, we see that they are held tightly in a headlock, pistol pressed to their head, in the hand of a agent that is dressed in whatever the standard undercover garb of the Calazarian Artists Association is.
They don't have standard garb because they're all a bunch of cosplaying artists who are actually assassins.
Alright, so this person is cosplaying as a famous assassin character from Calazar.
Of course.
They press the gun against Nil's head.
Oh, you know who a famous assassin is that CalazCon loves? Yeah, you know.
I don't think I do.
Oh, it's everyone's favorite Bishanen protagonist, Red Philodendron.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Except it's very clearly Red cosplay.
Yeah.
But a much younger Red, because that's the time period in which he was depicted in a Calazar series.
Yeah, it's the Mobile Suit Zeta era of Red.
Anyway, this agent says, CalazCon takes copyright infringement very seriously. You have been warned repeatedly. This is not a warning. There is a single shot, and we cut to black. Gishlak Nil's life's work will never be completed. And that's what I'm taking as the consequence for me never completing my drive to actually get officially in on Calazar.
I was gonna ask, how does Gishlak feel about not achieving that? And I'd like to know
because they're dead.
Well, I'd like to know how they felt about that before their room started to fill with smoke. What would they have said if asked a question?
They would have said, you know what, I'm glad that I don't have to listen to any of the big corporate interests. I can write what I want to write. I might take some inspiration, but I'm not violating copyright. But it turns out that Black Ops Squad from the executive producers of Calazar does not feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
This was not the first time someone has broken into their apartment. The last couple times were the warnings.
Amazing.
Zendre, it is 5 years since you were arrested from the legislature. Are you still in prison? Is your sentence up? Did you get paroled for good behavior? Where are you at?
5 years on the dot, he walks out of the prison a free man. His reputation in tatters and all of his relations just beneath the water. But there's a refreshing clarity that comes with that. There's not really many attachments to hold you back from starting over. looks at the job offer from Fishy in his hand, looks up. Now that he's a free man, he can finally take Fishy up on that offer, working as a consultant. On his own time, he does personal investigations into political espionage and basically using his talents of being a conniving little snake to root out other conniving little snakes.
There's a car waiting for you, and Fishy's isn't in it, but the driver is like taking you. Fishy has set up some like housing situation for you too, alongside this job.
Is it Louis Bellalaika in the car, in the driver's seat?
No, I think they died with Board Squadron. It's a suit. It's somebody who's never been to war.
Someone with soft hands.
Someone with soft hands who's never. Maybe they've tasted dirt. Maybe that Fishy still like looks for people who've done that at least.
Okay.
But yeah, has housing set up for you. And I guess if Red isn't going to help me unrot this barrel, Zendre might have been better the whole time.
Zandre's been true to his word. He's trying to turn things around for himself and like live a more honest life. I know that like it's probably tentative, and maybe Fishy will probably never trust Zendre completely, which I think is healthy to have a little bit of skepticism, but the two do work well together when not forced to vote against each other on matters. Somewhere along the way, Zendre tries to look into the 86, and maybe the results are inconclusive.
Do you want an idea of what you'd find?
Yeah.
So 2 of the squad were marked MIA after their final mission with Goliath, and eventually KIA. A third was eventually marked AWOL, and then the last one basically became a politician within the DFS to work against the human experimentation.
Which among them became the politician?
Danny, the empath.
Danny, okay. I'd have to talk with Christine about this, but I think he'd like work with Danny too, because, you know, they're all kind of like working towards the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just trying to live his best post-prison life.
Yeah. How does he feel that he was never able to get veteran soldiers off of the battlefield?
Yeah, I think I talked about that before, is that he is going to have that failure hanging over his head for the rest of his life, because, like, he went against the people who set him up to do what he went in to do as a legislator. He went against them to try and get that done and couldn't do that. But I think he takes some small solace that by helping others achieve that same sort of situation, it gives him at least a little bit of peace of mind about it.
Mm-hmm. And one last question for each of you. What do you think your legacy would be for the future, for the time you spent in the legislature, in the subcommittee for Hestiel on Logel? Dr. Kane?
This is tricky. Around the time that the legislature was attacked, we talked about there being like a whole interview process where people were like discussing, oh wow, there's a robot working on the legislature. We're having feelings about that. And I suspect that probably overshadows a lot of what happens, just in that the disappearance of Dr. Kane is not something that was super widely publicized. So people in the know that this is someone who was a deserter and someone who left and someone who just didn't ever come back. But most people don't realize that and just remember her as like, oh, here's the robot that worked in the legislature.
Red, what's your legacy?
There's a split between more authoritarian elements within the DFS who take excerpts of what little Red did and said in the public eye and points to this saying, here's someone who really gets it. Here's someone who can see how clearly the old DFS was flawed. And I think both halves of this divided DFS are trying to leverage him in this way. And then I think there are some people that are just like, I heard he blew up the speaker of the house one time. Here, if you watch the video footage, you can see very clearly he's got his hands on the control. See? He did it. He blew up Katana Fabrizio. And it was brilliant.
Fishy, what's your legacy from your time in the subcommittee?
My legacy is largely buried. People point at Fishy as a career politician. Fishy has good slogans, unrot this barrel, good people working for him, but space is big, time is long, and the big ideas finally catch up with Fishy. It's easy to have big ideas when we can focus on this one planet, I can focus on this one squad, I can keep these 24 people alive. But now it's millions of people and billions of dollars and multiple subcommittees and training interns and kissing babies and...
So, is the subcommittee a footnote on his history?
Yeah, it's definitely in the wiki page, like the early life section. People forget, and maybe even Fishy forgets that origin. And maybe Fishy forgets because it's painful to remember why he started where he is. So instead of ever confronting that, he just keeps pushing forward and building bigger ambitions until, I don't know if it collapses or if it works out and it's just a snake eating a bigger snake forever for him. But Terminal Company may remember him and he may remember them, but no one else does.
Kieklak, what's your legacy in the years that pass?
There is a brief period of time where they're a relatively popular author. Relatively small popularity, all things considered, but among people who are into mecha fiction that isn't Calazar. They're a name that gets tossed around a little bit. Their much more lasting legacy from their time in the subcommittee, and also from their entire life, is the massive fandom wonk that they caused. The fact that they used forces of the state against one of their own rivals in the fandom. The fact that they ran dozens of sock puppets while also being a member of the political state. That shows up in a YouTube video 50 years later of, the 10 biggest fandom dramas in the DFS. And they show up at, number 6 or whatever. They're not remembered for their political work. If they are, it is usually conspiratorial in that, they were probably a mole in the legislature for Calazar. There are also definitely conspiracy theories about their disappearance. Their fate was never known to the public at large. The CAA keeps their operations pretty tight. Just an author who was moderately prolific, they were decent, they disappeared before they could finish their, main series, and also they did some real wild fandom stuff back in the day.
Zendre, what is your legacy as the years pass by, and how is your time viewed in the subcommittee for Hestiel?
Well, not favorably. When his crimes got exposed and made the rounds, his entire reputation was tarnished. Obviously, it's hard finding work under the weight of that. The one saving grace is that Fishy was able, two saving graces, thank you, Red, is that Fishy and Red were willing to give him some work and something to do, but socially, he never bounced back from that. In a weird roundabout way, I think this is tightened vigilance around who gets vetted for political positions on Hestiel as far as DFS is concerned, or at least the faction that Zendre has aligned himself with, being the non-experimentation faction. I think when all is said and done, he kind of retires quietly in his 40s. The injuries from the attack on the legislator caught up to him. Basically, he's not able to really perform his functions, and so spends the rest of his days in ignominy, but he's accepted that.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this journey through the politics behind the squads battling on behalf of the DFS for control of Hestiel specifically, and Logel generally. It's been a pleasure to have you, audience. Thank you for following us all the way to this end, and we hope that you, personally, will remember, all glory to Calazar. Thanks for listening to CalazCon. This episode was edited by me, Austin Ramsey. You can find my work at austin-ramsey.itch.io. Sound balancing for this episode was done by Christine Blight. You can reach her for voice acting at CVBlight@gmail.com. The show's music is by Devin Nelson. You can find them on all social media at Devin Decibel. If you'd like to support CalazCon, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/CalazCon. Please tell your friends about the show too. Remember, all glory to Calazar.